Ottawa, as the Commission into the Emergencies Act gets underway. Lawyers representing police forces and provinces say they don't believe the Trudeau government had to take the unprecedented step of invoking the Act. The Public Order Emergency Commission, led by Justice Paul Rouleau, started off with opening statements on Thursday, the beginning of what is expected to be 6 weeks of hearings into the government's use of the Act last February. The Act, which had never been used since it replaced the War Measures Act in 1988, allowed the government to clear the streets of Ottawa, freeze financial assets of convoy protesters, and keep protesters away from downtown Ottawa and border crossings across the country. The protesters were demonstrating against COVID-19 vaccine mandates, lockdowns and the government. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, along with several senior cabinet ministers, other government officials, convoy leaders, local officials and police chiefs are among the more than 60 witnesses expected to testify. Trudeau's cabinet gave Rouleau a mandate to look at the convoy's funding, misinformation and the impact of the protests on the economy. Rouleau said he will look at those issues, but his primary focus will be on why the government invoked the Act and whether it was justified in doing so. He said getting to the truth of what happened is important for society. Uncovering the truth is an important goal when difficult events occur that impact the lives of Canadians. The public has a right to know what happened, Rouleau said in his opening remarks. The Commission has given legal standing to civil rights groups, convoy leaders, police agencies, municipalities and provinces to testify. Lawyers representing those groups gave opening statements Thursday. Mandy England, a lawyer for the government of Alberta, noted the province had cleared a long-running blockade at the Coutts border crossing before the Emergencies Act was invoked. Existing law enforcement tools that were already in place were completely sufficient, and they were successfully used, she said. England and lawyers from Saskatchewan said the provinces were only informed hours before the government brought in the Act. The provinces both argued the federal government has made their mind up to bring in the Act even before meeting with them. Christopher Diana, lawyer for the Ontario Provincial Police, said the provincial force was tracking the convoy before it hit the province's borders. He said the extra tools the Act provided were not necessary. While the emergencies legislation, in particular the provincial legislation, provided useful tools, there was sufficient legal authority in their absence to deal with the protest activities that took place. Other parties disagreed. A lawyer representing former Ottawa Police Chief Peter Slowly said they will show that the convoy protests were unlike anything the country had seen and represented an unprecedented threat to national security, as well as a paradigm shift in public protests. The federal government has its own lawyer as part of the commission, Robert McKinnon, who will argue the government had no other choice. The evidence will show the invocation of the Emergencies Act was a reasonable and necessary decision, given escalating volatile and urgent circumstances across the country. Paul Champ, a lawyer representing businesses and residents in downtown Ottawa, said his group will take no position on the use of the Act, but said an event like the convoy cannot be allowed to happen again. He listed the many disruptions people living downtown experienced from loud air horns and trucks running around the clock, to closed businesses and the inability to use public transit or even get a taxi. He said the commission needs to remember that 15,000 people call the area home. People see the parliament buildings, and they think this is all government's, and so forth, but there are people, there are children, there are schools. The inquiry is a legislative requirement of the Act. The Act also requires that Rouleau deliver a report by February. He said that is a tight timeline, and unlike other inquiries, like Air India or the inquiry into missing and murder Indigenous women, it cannot be extended or changed. This commission of inquiry is unique, to the best of our knowledge, in that its deadline is set by statute. Other inquiries have worked under deadlines set by Cabinet. That sort of deadline is set based on an assessment of needs, and can and frequently is extended as circumstances require. This is not a possibility for our commission. The hearings in the building that houses Library and Archives Canada are being live-streamed, and members of the public can share their views with the Commission online.